Okay, so I'm going to tell you this story. I don't know if my mouth is matching the words or what. Obviously, I have a funny little filter on here. So, I raised an only child. And my mother met my biological father when she was like 19. And she fell madly in love with him. She'd been sexually active probably since lots of sexual abuse and whatever. So probably since like 12. So at 19, she met my father, Carl, and just fell for him. And she got pregnant, and then her mom, even though she was an adult, her mom got mad and drove over to Shelby, Montana, and got my mom and brought her back to Eureka, Montana. So that would be like over Marias Pass or whatever. And just before I was born, October 1970, my grandfather died. So my dad's father died, and my mom come back over the mountain. So just before I was born. And Marias Pass was snowed in, and she couldn't get over it. So they went back to Eureka. Now, had she got over the pass, she probably would have married my biological father. She just stayed there. It's very interesting, right? So if you know much about Montana, Shelby, Montana is a completely different planet than Eureka, Montana. Because Shelby, Montana is in the wheat fields, the flat plains. Like the mountains are a long ways away. It's flat. It's big sky. It's rattlesnake. It's different. Eureka, Montana is, mountains and bears and elk and deer and a completely different lifestyle, like completely. So she went back to Eureka, and then after I was born, my biological father came over like one time and held me, I guess. His mom, I think, was weird about it, and my mom's parents were weird about it. I don't really know. My whole life I thought it was his mom, which would be my grandmother, who's also a witch. They're all psychics and seers on all sides of my family. Anyway, that was just a side point. So, because of one of their mothers, they didn't stay together. And so my mother met the man that raised me. His name's Ivan Cox. And when I was 2 years old. And so, no, she married him when I was 2. She met him when I was like 1. And my biological father was told to stay out of my life. It was never on my birth certificate. My mother was adopted with the last name Valcor, and that's the name that I had. That was my legal name on my prescriptions and stuff as a kid. I didn't know my last name wasn't Cox. I didn't even find out that the man that was raising me wasn't my dad until I was like 8 years old. And then I was only told the first name because my grandparents owned a bar nearby and they didn't want me to know. And I had a brother and a sister, and so they'd come up and see the grandparents sometime, and I didn't know they were my brother and sister. Yeah. So when I turned 21, I contacted my biological father. I sent him a letter and I said, hey, you want to have contact or whatever? And so then he came over to Eureka, Montana, which is a very big deal because after that, he never left the farm ever. He's a farmer, a cowboy. He just never did that. And so then I met my brother and I met my biological sister. We're not close now. Time is a funny little character. But anywho, so, I met him. There was some things I told him that I was gay. He already knew because he came up and visited me and my partner, and he knew by me watching her sing. There was some weird things about it, but that's not what this video is about. So anyway, la-di-da, life goes on. Fast forward, I don't know. I might have been 40. Like, I'm 54 now, and I think I had already moved to Port Townsend, so I think I was already in my 40s. And my, I was trying to think earlier today. I don't remember exactly when it was. But anyway, it was Father's Day, and I decided to send my biological father I was Flickr, so the Yahoo photo share site. I'd put a bunch of photos of me throughout my life and a bunch of photos of him. So pig farming, horse riding, sheep, like horses and wheat fields, and, just all these different photos of his life. And like I said, my mom got married when I was 2, and as soon as my mom got married, then Carl got married. He waited for my mom to get married, and then he got married. Love. They just loved each other so much. And interesting, right? So my mom married my stepdad. He's like an Elvis type, really good-looking, hot-headed, 12 years older than her. She was 22. He was 34. So she's 20 years older than me. And, so she got pregnant at 18 or 19. And anyway, so I'm in my 40s. I send him this photo album and say, oh, happy Father's Day. And I decided, hey, I'm going to just share it with my mom, right? And so I shared it with my mom. And she messaged me, and, this is not verbatim or whatever, but she said, thank you. Like, thank you so much. She had been released. She had been relieved. Let me back up just a little bit. So when he came over to meet me when I was 21, we went out to pizza, Valley Pizza, with my mom. And so it was just the 3 of us, right? And I'm an adult, and I just met him. And so the love I could feel among them, it was so grounded. It was so solid. There was so much love. I had never felt that love before, and I never felt it that she had it with my stepfather. They had a fiery, they fought all the time. They had fun. They had, lust, surely. But I don't know that they had deep, deep love. And so I felt that between my biological parents when I met him when I was 21. Okay, so then we fast back forward to, I sent him the album, the photo album for Father's Day. And I sent my mom a copy, and she said, thank you. And I'm like, what? And I could feel her relief. And she said, she understood finally, right? After 40, years, she understood that he wasn't meant for her, and that she could never live the life of a farmer, of no mountains, that he could never live in Eureka, Montana, because his family land was in Shelby. And he's a farmer, and it's flatlands and it's wheatlands, and he could never live in the mountains, and she could never live on the flats. And that she didn't want to be a sheep farmer, and she didn't want to be a pig farmer, and she didn't want horses, and she didn't want that lifestyle. And so when I sent her a photo album portraying his lifestyle and what it had been over the last 20 years, I liberated her, because he was the love of her life, and they never got to be together. And after that, like in 2016, I went and see my biological father, and for the last time, and it'll be the last time. Long story, but I learned the truth of, my grandma coming to get my mom and took her from Shelby, and so it was my mom's mom that was the bitch that, separated them. And, but, I'm teary-eyed because of the love that I felt. So when my mom was, very sexually promiscuous, naughtily so for a long time, and sexual abuse, but she was in love with my father. And when they made love, they were in love. And her whole life, she regretted it. I had no idea. She's my stepdad that raised me. My mom was madly in love with my biological father. He was the love of her life, and she never let go until the day of that photo album. And she was like, wow, that wasn't a life I could have had, and I didn't want it, and I never could have handled it, and it liberated her and set her free. I had no idea that she was stuck on my biological father her entire fucking life. And I do know that I was conceived in amazing love, but that they never got to be together, and they always wanted to be together. And then 40 years later, they both realized they could have never been together because they would have been miserable, and it wasn't a lifestyle either one of them wanted, and it liberated them. I mean, how interesting. I was just thinking about that tonight.